Hey guys, welcome to the Hertz Podcast. I'm Peyton Hurt.
And I'm Kelsey Hurt.
And this week we're going to be talking about anger.
Yes, we are on episode 28, and if it's your first time listening, we post weekly every Tuesday.
Yep, every
very
Tuesday
early
morning.
in the morning. And I've talked about anger before in a solo episode back in, I want to say May or April. But this is kind of going deeper into where we see it in the Bible and how we can respond as Christians when we feel anger. So getting into our weekend. This past week, I feel like it flew by.
Yeah, it went by really fast.
The only big thing we had was your kind of like procedure that you mentioned last week.
I had an incision. I have nothing serious. It's just a pilar cyst. So it was probably the size of a dime. Mm-hmm. And then within a year, it grew to be about the size of a nickel. So I was like, it was starting to like part my hair, and I was like, all right, I got to get this thing out of here.
Yeah, it was getting uncomfy too.
So I got that removed. Still got the stitches in. I'm healing great. Mm-hmm. The procedure went very well, and yeah, I'm recovering well.
Good. This weekend we kind of took it easy. I did decorate for fall, so if you're watching the video, there's a little pumpkin in the corner.
Yes.
I love thinking that it's fall, but it's still summer and it's hot out.
I know. Fall season is the best. I love the weather. I love when the leaves change. It's so beautiful.
And when it gets crisp. And new coffee, fall coffee from Starbucks comes out tomorrow, and I'm so excited.
No.
I'm so excited. So I think fall just brings some good things to look forward to. New seasons.
Yes, new season. So
let's go ahead and get into the episode.
Yeah.
We're starting out in Ephesians 4:26 through 27. Mm-hmm. And that says, "In your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry, and do not give the devil a foothold."
I love this verse so much because I look at the beginning, it says, "In your anger, do not sin." So it's saying that obviously God gave us emotions, right? Mm-hmm. So it doesn't say like, don't ever be angry, right? Because it's okay to be angry, but it's what you do with that anger, right? So it's saying do not sin. So, you may be asking, what are some examples of sinning in anger, right? So I'm just going to give a few examples, but, say you're in an argument with a coworker, your significant other, friendships, family members,
maybe
whatever
even
that
a stranger.
May be. Right.
I think of social media even, like it doesn't have to be an argument in real life, but social media has become such an easy platform to use your voice, and it's not always for good. And sometimes I look at comments, I'm like, why are we being rude?
Right.
Like, can we just be kind?
Yeah.
So I think that, like you said, like how we use anger to build others up is really important. I mean, we shouldn't tear each other down.
No, for sure. And then, so being angry, again, those are just some examples of what it looks like to be angry and sin.
Yes, I did want to mention something. So I mentioned how I've talked about this before in another episode called Feelings. And in college, we kind of thought about anger because, I went to college to be an educator. So dealing with emotions and understanding how we can help people through emotions. They showed this iceberg, this picture of like an iceberg, and there was, obviously the iceberg was submerged underwater, but then you could only see the tip of the iceberg on top. And the tip of the iceberg said anger, but then what was under the water, what you can't see, was like sadness, confusion, rejection, these other emotions. So anger might not always just be like, I'm angry, but I think it also points to just feeling like things are unfair.
Yeah.
So I think we live in a world where, again, it doesn't say do not be angry. It says do not sin in your anger. We live in a world where it'd be impossible to be not angry.
Right.
There's so much unfairness in the world and injustice.
For sure.
So like having an anger kind of shows you care. But it's a very fine line between I care versus I'm going to sin and put others down, or I'm going to look at the situation not in a godly way. So just understanding there's like a very fine line.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that was very good. And I also think like looking back to the verse too, where it says, do not let the enemy have a foothold. I think that just shows how much power anger has over us if we fall short. But I also wanted to give like another example because anger isn't just having an argument, but it can be like maybe unforgiveness. Maybe you're angry at somebody for something that they did to you, right? So maybe it looks like unforgiveness or resentment against somebody. That can be another example too.
I think with going back to that being a fine line, anger can cause bitterness to build up. It can cause unforgiveness, and it can cause a hardened heart.
Yes.
So over time, anger just eventually you're not yourself. If you don't release it to God.
Yes, because God tells us to love, and if your heart is hardened, it's hard to love that person.
See what you did there? We just fist bumped if you're listening. Okay, moving on to Mark 3, 1-5. This is where Jesus heals on the Sabbath. Another time, Jesus went into the synagogue, and a man with a shriveled hand was there. Some of them were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus, so they watched him closely to see if he would heal him on the Sabbath. Jesus said to the man with the shriveled hand, "Stand up in front of everyone." Then Jesus asked them, "Which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil, to save life or to kill?" But they remained silent. He looked around at them in anger and deeply distressed at their stubborn hearts, said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." He stretched it out, and his hand was completely restored.
So some key verses I wanted to touch there, and what I want to look back to is when Jesus, in verse 4, Jesus asked them, "Which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil, to save life or to kill?" But they remained silent. And then in verse 5, he looked around at them in anger, right? This is Jesus, and deeply distressed at their stubborn hearts. So I wanted to emphasize anger, right? Because Jesus is showing anger to these people, but it's in a righteous anger, and we'll go into explaining that later. But Jesus is upset and saddened because these people's hearts are hardened, that they are so focused on the rules of not being able to heal on the Sabbath that they would let another person suffer.
And that word distressed, that's actually really a word that involves a lot. Distressed is usually when someone is experiencing great physical or mental pain, anxiety, or sorrow. So it means that they're usually filled with overwhelming, deeply upset. So that just shows how much God loved that person and loved what's good in that situation, but also that he did feel some immense emotions.
Right. So with that though, again, this is an example of what we can do in situations of anger, because Jesus didn't tear them down. He didn't tell them, he called them out, right? They could tell that he was frustrated, but Jesus healed to show
what is right.
Right, to show what is right.
And his love.
Right. So we, in moments like this, instead of reacting out of emotion, we should react out of love, which is what Jesus did.
That's good. Yeah, for sure. James 1:20, was it 1:20? Yes. James 1:20 says, "Because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires." So this points back to the fact that when we are angry, our human anger, our flesh, does not produce the righteousness that God desires. So just taking a moment when we are angry to, take a deep breath, to turn to God in our anger. And it's not always easy. Should we discuss the Chick-fil-A thing that happened?
Yes, we should.
Okay. So here's an example, because examples are important, and it's not that deep of an example, but Peyton picked up Chick-fil-A for us today, and I asked him to get me a large fry because I was really hungry and craving fries. And when he opened the bag, my fries were more of my large fry was really just like a small fry.
Yeah,
he ate half of it.
I did.
And I got frustrated. Did I take a deep breath? I did not. So that's just such a small situation.
Yeah.
And a silly situation, but just understanding in those moments of anger, even the smallest things I think can make us angry. I think that it could be because really we don't sleep enough, we're hungry. There's day-to-day things that can be little point to little anger, or there's day-to-day things or things that you are going through where you're very angry. Maybe it's a relationship that has not healed over time. Maybe it's a wound that you dealt with from your childhood that points to bigger wounds and just affects your day-to-day. And we're not by any means saying that acting out of anger is an easy thing. Acting out of anger in a healthy way is an easy thing. So really using tools and using what God has given us. I think of verses where he says, above all else, love your neighbor as yourself. Really focusing on love and who God is, and to serve how God served and to be more godly is important when we approach this topic of anger. So sorry about the Chick-fil-A fries.
No, it's all good. Yeah, no, so after Kelsey and I talked about it, like, it's just very interesting because a lot of times that we have topics, and I know we've talked about this before, but there seems to be like a theme where whatever that is, that's what the enemy likes to try to attack, because we have stories, I feel like, commonly that happen around that time.
Yeah,
so
we usually don't share them, but I know, like, when I discussed insecurities podcast, it was like, wow, that week was really hard.
Yes.
So definitely some spiritual warfare there, but just...
Well, I was talking, when Kelsey and I were talking, I was like, we're really fighting over food right now, aren't we? I was like, this is silly.
Yeah, we eventually laughed it off.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just kind of a silly story to point to the fact that overcoming anger...
It's difficult. It can be difficult.
Because our flesh.
But our flesh wants to win, and we have this sense of pride, right, with it that comes with anger.
Yeah.
But I think just releasing control and remembering that what we do with anger, we don't sin, and that God is there to help us to control our emotions, that we can give them to him. Yeah,
we had a good sermon this week where basically what stuck with me was that the pastor, he was like, people are watching you. Like, unbelievers are watching believers to see how they treat one another, to see how they speak about one another. And I think this anger can really cause you to stumble in your words. It can cause you to put others down. And so knowing that, it's just, like you said, I like the verse where it's like, don't give the devil a foothold, because he will, if he can have an inch, he will take a mile.
Right. But I think it's interesting that that's like one of the emotions that describes, like, do not let the devil have a foothold is related with anger.
Yeah, because
right?
I think with anger, like, you can brew on it all you want. You can talk about it all you want. And it's just this thing that builds and builds and builds.
Kind of boils up.
Yeah, so being on guard to not let the bitterness build up, or unforgiveness, or a hardened heart. I know there's a verse in the Bible where I think it talks about conflict. Like, if you have a conflict with somebody, take another brother or sister in Christ and approach them.
Go to them one-on-one.
Yes, is it one-on-one?
I think it's one-on-one, and then bring a brother or sister in Christ, and then take it to the church.
Yeah, so like going with grace and love and humility. Humility is a big one.
Yes, yeah, good. So yeah, again, James 1:20. We'll go into a little bit of, I know we talked about like righteous anger and unrighteous anger. So yeah, we're gonna give examples of human anger as well, because I know James 1:20, again, just to go back through it, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. So what does human anger look like, right? So human anger may look like, you did this to me, so I'm going to get you back, right? So if someone wrongs you, where does your thought process go? Do you say, am I going to forgive them, or am I going to try to get them back in a way that humiliates them, right? Are you holding on to that bitterness? Or are you having a hardened heart towards somebody, right? So that's an example there. I know we talked about it briefly. Human anger maybe is getting into an argument with a friend, spouse, coworker, whatever that may be, right? Whatever argument that may be. Because human anger tends to tear down, right? So if you're speaking, again, if you're in an argument and I am just saying things that are discouraging to you, and you're speaking out of emotion, that's not out of the spirit. That's out of that you're speaking that's your flesh. That's what your flesh, right? Like you have those emotions, you have those thoughts that your flesh wants you to say.
And I think I kind of mentioned this, but it also is an emotion that lingers. I think, like I said, it can build over time. And something that helps me when my anger lingers, especially if I'm like just dealing with people who have upset me, or maybe there's certain situations where I just take something wrong, because anger can really come at any point.
Yeah.
I like to say, Lord, help me with this, especially when I know I'm out of control thinking about it or out of control speaking about it. Lord, help me with this. And really being on guard to understand maybe this is a me issue where I'm taking things wrong,
Yeah.
or maybe this is me just grasping onto something and understanding like I can give it to God. I have the power to give it to God, and He'll help me through it.
Yeah, no, definitely. Definitely. That's so good. Okay, do you have anything to add to like any human anger? I know that was a very brief.
Kind of all over, but yeah.
Okay, so I do want to touch on like righteous anger, right? Because I know we said we were going to touch on that. So if we look back to Mark 3, again, we read that Jesus was angry because the people had hardened hearts and cared more for the rules than people, right? So that right there is justified anger. But again, we saw what Jesus did with that anger. Jesus didn't sin. He didn't yell. He didn't tear anybody down. He healed the man and showed the truth and he responded with love through his anger. So we saw that. So that's an example of righteous anger. In John 2, we saw Jesus drove the money changers with anger, right? It was righteous because they were turning God's house into a market to make money. So again, righteous anger isn't something that we see in the world, and we see and when we see it when we see bad things in the world, we see wrongs and care about God's heart, and we respond with the truth, right? To try to make that seem good.
And I think it goes back to whatever anger it might be, because again, anger, you can get anger from, I already listed some situations, but the sermon that we listened to this week at church was talking about unity. There's a verse in the Bible, and I need to start writing this down before because I can't tell you the reference. I want to say it's like 1 Corinthians. I could be wrong. But it's make every effort to keep peace with everyone as much as you can, or something like that.
I don't remember.
I know. I wish I could.
That's okay.
Like that. But basically, as much as you can, try to keep peace with everybody. And I believe it goes on to say something along the lines, so that they may know me. Yeah, so that's a really good verse. Also, with where he was talking about Jesus clears the temple courts, if you're wanting to look into that or read about that, that's John 2, specifically verse 13 through 25.
Yeah, and he drove the people out of the market out of the temple, because they were turning God's house into a market. Into a market where they were they knew people were going to be there to worship, and they were turning it into a spot where they can make money. So again, I know Jesus got angry, he flipped tables, and he drove them out, but I think that shows that we don't have to just stand down, right? Like, we are allowed to stick up as believers for the truth, right? Like, if someone is using the Lord's name in vain, I have the right to be angry because they are using the Lord's name in vain, right? We believe against that. So those are just some examples of what righteous anger. So in conclusion, because I know we threw out a lot out there, but we really wanted to focus on righteous anger versus worldly anger. Knowing that when we experience anger, it's so easy to act out of the emotion, whether that's with words, thoughts, or letting it linger so that it can build up or tear others down, and eventually tear us apart. But we know that God has given us the tools to turn to Him so that we can deal with it in a godly way,
that can lead others closer to Christ, and so that we don't deal with unforgiveness, bitterness, etc. We live in a fallen world, and it's so easy to be angry. And I think that if that anger leads us to closer to God and leaning into his love and showing love, that's an amazing thing. But if it leads us far away from God and helps us to lead others astray, then that is where it's not okay.
Yeah, and tearing people down too.
Yeah. So we hope that you enjoyed this episode. Did you have anything else to say?
No, that was it.
Because we could go on and on.
Yes, we could. We really could.
But we hope that you enjoyed the examples. Thank you for digging into the Word with us.
We'll see you guys next week.
Yeah, see ya.